This is Real Estate Rookie episode 377. So we're going to hear about losing $40,000 from a partnership and then talk about what are the things you need to consider when getting into a partnership. And then Tony also mentions which fast food napkins work best for contracts. I'm Ashley Kerr, and I am joined with my co-host, Tony J. Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie podcast, where every week, 3 times a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And we've got some great questions lined up for you today. We're going to cover what to do when a tenant absolutely trashes your property, what a HELOC is and how it impacts your credit score. But first, we're being joined live by someone from the rookie audience who wants to ask a question to me and Ashley, and he's coming live from Miami.
Miami.
For those of you who don't know, that's the famous Will Smith song, and Ashley's dying to sing that one for the rookie audience today.
Jerry and Francois, welcome to the Real Estate Rookie podcast on our reply episode. We are so excited to have you today to ask your question live with us. So welcome.
Yes, glad for you guys to have me here. I'm super excited, guys.
Okay, well, what question do you want to throw at us today?
Okay, well, hey, Tony and Ashley, I've had a partnership over the last few years and made many mistakes. There was no structured partnership roles, no defined percentages, and just a signed piece of McDonald's napkin to validate our partnership.
Before you go any further, I just have to ask, what did it actually say on the napkin?
It said that we're going to be in business and everything from this point on would be 50-50. That's just all they said.
Yeah, I think the first mistake, Jerry, is that it was a McDonald's napkin. You always got to go Chick-fil-A napkins instead. That's my fast food place of preference, but please continue.
Yeah, so in the result of that, I lost about almost over 40K. So I learned a lot from the situation, and I know I would need partnership to utilize to scale. So my question is, what should I look for? What traits, what experience, basically what buy box, what I would need for me to step out into partnership again.
So, I think you touched on a lot. And, I'm sure Ash and I were probably thinking in the same direction here, right? But you said, hey, we had no structured partnership role, no defined percentages. So I think before you even go out and start looking for a partner, you've got to identify what exactly is it that you're hoping this partnership can fulfill.
Exactly.
Because there's different reasons that people partner. Like when Ashley talks about her first partnership, it was like, man, I'm just so scared to do this by myself, and like I don't have a whole lot of capital to go out and get this thing done. For me, it was like, hey, we've got the experience, we've got the skill set. I'm super confident in making it happen, but I just lost my day job. So I couldn't get approved for the mortgages. Like I even had capital set aside to put down, but I just couldn't get the mortgage approved anymore. So it's like, you got to think about what are the different reasons you're looking for that potential partnership. And that's how you start to build out what those potential roles are.
Yeah. And while you're kind of in that identifying moment for yourself, identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. So what are you going to bring to the table? And then what do you need someone else to do? Are you maybe have no idea about rehab, construction, and you want to bring someone on that has that kind of experience? Literally sit down, write a list of what your strengths are, your weaknesses are, and then flip those for a potential partner. Another thing that I wanted to add is you could do a personality test too.
Yeah.
Like a disc profile on someone. Do it for yourself and do it for somebody else too, because, and there's also an Enneagram too, because having great communication with your partner, you're going to learn how to actually communicate with them. And sometimes it's not that anybody is a bad person or they're not doing what you think or you don't think they're treating you right. It's literally just the way they communicate. And when you can kind of understand what Enneagram someone is, it can kind of help you understand the situation better, but also learn how to communicate with them too. And then they can also learn how to communicate with you too. So I think that's like getting to understand your partner. And Tony jokes about the love languages, but I think that's also something to make you compatible with a partner too, is understanding how they show appreciation. And so that may not be, showering them with chocolates and things like that, but that could be acts of service where they like, Jerian, I know you appreciated me getting that deal under contract because you brought me lunch today. Like, thank you. I value you as a partner, things like that.
And just out of curiosity, Ash, like, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but do you know like your disc score, like where you score the highest?
Yeah, it is an I.
Gotcha. And okay, I'm like a low I. I'm a super high C and super high S. Like I just like the structure. So
The other three are kind of like level with me.
I think the only other thing I'd add as well, right, is like you talked about the no structured percentages, Jarian. I thought that's a super important thing to try and figure out up front as well. So before you guys go out and any money exchanges hands, either between the two of you as partners or buying this property, whatever it may be, you should sit down and have as tough of a conversation as you can about, hey, what exactly is the structure of this partnership? What percentage do I get? And what duties and responsibilities do I need to fulfill to obtain or to earn that percentage? What exactly are you, partner, going to be doing? And, what is your percentages for doing that? And then just start to think like worst case scenarios. What happens if one of us wants out? What happens if one of us dies? What happens if one of us gets divorced? Like there are different questions you want to ask to try and identify how to structure this.
Jerian, I want you to think of like some of the things that went wrong in your partnership. And can you even think of different ways that you could have had more transparency as to what are some of the things that happened with your partner? And maybe we can help you come up with ideas of how to prevent those things happening again by creating that transparency.
Well, he was able to probably steal 40K from because, like Tony said, we didn't have any structure on percentages. So he was always the type to, be in control of the bank accounts and stuff in that nature. So it was really tough for me to even be involved in the business because it was his way or no way. So that situation kind of pushed me back a little bit with that.
And I think that's like a great example of what Tony was just talking about is like clearly defining your structure and your roles and responsibilities, having it in writing. And yes, one person can be in charge of the finances and everything like that. But I think that's where having the transparency of any single time you could log into the bank account and look at it.
Exactly.
For my business partners, I control all the bank accounts. I manage the money, but they all have the apps where they can, look on their phone. I'm pretty sure one of them has never even logged in, but they can go in at any time and just, look through what transactions are happening, but also like sitting down every month or every quarter and going through the financial statements too, as to you have, the right to see what the financial statements are. And if your partner isn't giving them to you or, there's delays or things like that, that might start the red flag sooner. So it doesn't get to the point where it's 40,000.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jaren, I think, the biggest thing is to not let the fear of another partnership kind of going off the rails stop you from pursuing that in the future, because you've got two options here, right? It's like either you learn the lesson that partnerships are terrible and they're never worthwhile and you're just never going to do them again. Or you can learn the lesson to say, hey, I know partnerships have a time and place to be effective, and I just maybe didn't go about it in the most effective way to begin with. And like, what are the lessons I can learn from there? And what I like to kind of tie the partnerships to, I also joked about the love languages, but I feel like there are some truths that, apply to all different types of relationships, business, personal, whatever it may be. So like, are you married, Jarian?
I'm engaged.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, brother. So
thank you.
When you think about your fiance and how your fiance maybe balances you out, like what are some of those strengths that you feel your fiance brings to the relationship?
She definitely keeps us organized. I could tell you that much. And just having everything easy and well to do, that's her right there. Like,
yeah, so you're more maybe the big picture guy and she's the detail person, right? Now, when you go start looking for a partnership, you don't want another big picture person because no one's going to do anything, right? Like all those little details are going to slip through the cracks. So it's like, okay, can I find someone that compliments me in the same way that my fiance does?
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually in partnering with her now from leaving that situation. So I feel like I found the best partner now.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Because it is mutually beneficial because it's one household. And when you're partners with someone else, it could also be, their spouse, their kids, you have two different families that you're trying to support. And,
Yeah.
each person is territorial towards their own family and they want the best of that. But when you're in one household, it definitely makes it a lot easier to know you're loyal to each other in the business and that you have you're trying to benefit each other.
I just want to quickly share like some ideas in terms of where to find that potential partnership because, obviously, you've partnered with your fiance, which like I said, I think is a great place. If you and your significant other can go down that journey, it is fantastic. My wife and I have done that as well. But for other people who maybe don't have a significant other, spouse, fiance, whoever that they feel that they can partner with, or maybe who's interested in partnering, I think you've got to start to expand your network in ways that exposes you to different and new people. Going to local meetups is a fantastic place to spark some of those partnerships. Going to bigger conferences like BPCon, a great way to spark some of those relationships. Just being active in the Bigger Pockets forums, the Real Estate Rookie Facebook group, because you can start to build connections with people virtually now easier than ever before. So I think the more people you can start talking to, the more connections you can make, the easier it becomes to start to identify, okay, who's the right person for me to actually partner with?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. 100%.
So, Jerian, do you have another question for us?
Yeah, I have one question that I wrote for you guys.
Yeah, please.
How do you balance your short-term cash flow needs with your long-term wealth building in your investment?
Well, I can tell you how I started out doing it and how I do it first now, I guess.
Okay.
Starting out, I was like just 100% cash flow because I was thinking that I would have, even if I didn't have appreciation in the property, that I would have debt pay down to build equity in the property. So my long-term wealth was these properties, they cash flowed now, but in the future, they'd be paid off because the tenants were paying the rent and that was my wealth builder. Now I've kind of built myself a comfortable cash flow standpoint. And now I'm a little more focused on appreciation because that's going to give me even more wealth down the road. So I still like to see some cash flow. I did recently buy a property that's probably just going to like literally break even, but it has a huge potential for appreciation to sell it, 5 years down the road. So one thing I'm trying to do is kind of like stagger things so that it's just not all cash flow at once, but no appreciation. But like in 5 years in, this area, I know that I could sell this if I wanted to or refinance it and build wealth that way. But another thing too is you can do 1031 exchanges and do the stack method where you're maybe buying a single family, a duplex now, and then you're just going to do a 1031 exchange where for tax purposes, you will sell the property and then purchase another one and not pay taxes on that gain of selling the property. And you're just rolling into bigger and bigger properties. James Daynard talks about this a lot. You can find him on YouTube on Project RE, but he will describe how he does the stack method. And that's how he's been able to build wealth, is redoing the 1031 exchange, but just starting small and continue to build up.
Okay.
And I think for me, Jared, a lot of it comes down to how you would prioritize those goals, right? Those motivations, because usually people get into real estate investing either for cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits. Like those are the three big buckets that kind of drive people. And if you know that today cash flow is what's most important to you, like generating cash today, then I probably focus on activities that prioritize that.
Yeah.
And my thoughts on this have evolved over the last couple of years, but it's like, if say I were starting from zero today, I would probably focus on something that's a little bit more active income to begin with. Like if my goal is to leave my job as fast as humanly possible, I would probably focus on things that are more actively like active income, right? Like flipping, wholesaling, property management, you can scale relatively quickly. So I consider that active income as well. And then once you get that business to a certain point where you can walk away from the day job, now you can start, maybe putting some additional cash away to start buying assets. So I think, if I'm starting from zero, my biggest focus is cash flow. That's probably the approach that I would take.
Perfect. Love the answers, guys.
Hey, Jerian, before you go though, I'm curious, what does your portfolio look like right now?
So right now, I have 2 duplexes. One is with 3 units, and I'm actually house hacking one that I'm in right now.
Congratulations. That's awesome. So next we have to get you on for a full episode to tell us all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, Jaron.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, guys.
No, of course, man. You're actually the very first person we've brought on for like a live question during a rookie show. So, dude, you just you're going to be hanging you're hanging banners in the Rookie Hall of Fame right now, man.
Well, Jarian, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated you taking the time to come on and ask your question, and hopefully it was really beneficial to other rookies to hear your experience and to have some answers for finding a partner. And if you'd like to find more about building out a partnership, you can go to biggerpockets.com/partnerships to purchase Tony and I's book called Real Estate Partnerships. And if you'd like a discount on the book, you can use the code PARTNER377. Jarian, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, Tony, that was amazing, wasn't it? Having Jarian on the show. I think that we should continue to do this with having guests on live.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic. I love being able to actually interact and the guests being able to ask follow-up questions. So guys, again, biggerpockets.com/reply. Get those questions in. We want to hear from you live on the show.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, give the big thumbs up and let us know in the comments if you want to hear more people on as guests during the reply episode. Okay, now let's get into our regular format and get to some more questions. So our next question is from Mike Woodruff. What are some recommendations on how to best protect myself as an investor? I am purchasing a rental and trying to figure out what is the best type of insurance and or ways to protect me personally. I know an LLC would probably be best, but have heard mixed answers if I should be able to transfer it after closing if there's a loan on it. Another option I have heard is just to get an umbrella policy. Also, are there any specific disclosures or terms you make your renters agree to? Okay, so we got a couple different options there and a couple questions. So let's start back at the top here. So it's purchasing a rental and trying to figure out the best type of insurance or ways to protect himself personally. So the first answer is that you're going to talk to your agent and you're going to get a landlord policy. So this is where you are not living in the property, but you still want to insure your building, your property. And if there's a fire, your building, burns down, you still want to be able to build new. So you can either get replacement cost insurance on that, or you can get actual value insurance on that. And then another thing you want to look for with insurance is that since a tenant is living in there, the tenant's contents are not included in your insurance policy. So you want to make sure they have their own renter's insurance policy to cover their contents because your policy will not cover theirs. And then ways to protect yourself, you're going to want to make sure that that landlord policy has liability attached to it. And it's going to be up to a certain amount. And this is where, as you had said in your question, that you have heard of getting an umbrella policy. So if you have your landlord policy that covers up to a certain amount of liability protection, so let's say it's $300,000. That means that if somebody sues you or there is a claim or somebody has hospital bills they're wanting you to pay because of something that happened on your property, the insurance is going to pay up to $300,000 to hire an attorney and actually fight the lawsuit for you, or they're just going to settle and pay out a claim so that they don't have to deal with it and it ends up being cheaper than I'm hiring attorneys. But what you can do is purchase an umbrella policy, which is an all-encompassing policy that works like an umbrella. It goes over your other policy. So your first policy, your landlord policy, will kick in first. Then after that, if you exceed that first $300,000, then maybe you have $1 million of liability coverage in that umbrella policy. And that's when that policy will actually kick in. So in that example, that's $1.3 million that you have to cover any kind of lawsuits or claims against you. Okay. So that's what you can do if you have your property in an LLC or it's in your personal name. So you can put those two types of insurance policies on your property with either of the options of LLC or you personally. So the difference between an LLC and having in your personal name is who the person is actually going to sue. So is it going to be your name personally that they're suing, or is it going to be the LLC name? If your LLC owns the property, part of the reason of an LLC is limited liability protection. Okay. Hence LLC. So this is they're going to sue your LLC, and they only have stake or right to the contents or the assets of your LLC. So if you just own this one property in the LLC, you don't have a ton of equity in it, maybe $10,000, you just bought it recently, there's not going to be a lot for them to actually take from you. But if they sue you personally and you have your primary residence paid off, you have like 3 sports cars sitting in the garage, you have all of these assets and have a high net worth, they're going to have a lot more to go after than just you having to sell your rental property to give them the equity in it. So a lot of times this can be a personal decision, whether you should go the LLC route or the personal route, because if this is your first time buying a property, you bought it seller financing, 100% seller financing. So you don't even have any equity in it right now. And you are just getting your little bit of rental income and slowly saving it into a checking account. But you rent, you don't own a car, you have a bike, you don't have any assets to your name except for this one rental property. It's probably going to be okay because nobody can take anything from you if they sue you because you don't have anything else to give. But you do get the great financing. So Tony, do you kind of want to talk about the financing piece and how that should be considered when deciding against LLC in your personal name?
You made so many great points, Ash, and it makes me think of episode 105, back when we interviewed Brian Bradley, who specializes in asset protection for real estate investors. And one of the things he shared that's always stuck with me and that I try and repeat as many times as I can on this show is that and this ties in exactly with what you were saying, is that your level of asset protection should scale with your business. Because does it make sense to go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars on asset protection when your net worth is, $10,000, right? Or $50,000. And there, if you go back and you listen to that episode, he does a really good job of talking about the different types of asset protections at different levels of scale. And the person that's got, deca millionaire, right? Their level of asset protection is going to be different than the person that's starting off with 0. So I just, I want to caution our rookies from maybe going too far off the deep end with the asset protection up front. Like you want to find the level of asset protection that fits where you're at. But, there's people that are setting up these holding companies and this and that. And before you know it, you've got like 8 different LLCs for one property. It's like, is that really serving the purposes you're hoping it's serving? But back to your point, Ash, about like how sometimes the financing can play a role and how you take title to these properties. For us, we bought our first couple of short-term rentals using a 10% down vacation home loan. So we bought one in Joshua Tree, we bought one in Tennessee, and as we're using this type of debt, it's the loan does allow you to rent it out on a short-term rental basis when you're not using it yourself. But it is technically a loan that's meant for personal use, not business use. So I couldn't close using a 10% down vacation home loan while also closing in the name of my LLC because my LLC is a business entity. The loan itself is supposed to be for personal use. So just make sure you're triple checking. Like, for example, if you wanted to go like buy, say you're house hacking, you can't get an FHA loan and put it in an LLC. Right, like you got to make sure that the loan supports the type of entity you want to close in. So it's just another thing to be aware of. And one other thing I'll add on that, Ash, is like aside from the loan and the entity kind of matching up, you just also want to make sure that you're being super transparent with your insurance provider about what this property is being used for. Because I've seen them talk to some other investors who are buying a property and they plan to rent it out, but they're telling their mortgage person, they're telling their insurance provider they're just going to live in it themselves. And while you might get maybe slightly better terms, maybe your insurance policy is a little bit cheaper, if something did happen, you're not going to have the right protection. So we're very clear. If we're flipping a house, we tell our insurance provider, like, hey, this property is going to be vacant. We're going to have people working in this home. No one's going to live in there for probably 6 months. If it's going to be a short-term rental, we tell our insurance provider, hey, that we're going to have 12 to 15 different groups of people coming through every single month for as long as we own this thing. So just make sure you're being transparent with your insurance provider, because the more information you give them, the better more comprehensive coverage they can give you to kind of match what you're using that property for.
Yeah, I actually had a situation where I forgot to notify my agent of a change that we were doing. So we had purchased this property and it was going to be just a slight little 2-week cosmetic update, and then we were going to rent it. Well, then we started just to decide that actually we wanted to make this a higher end rental, and we started to build out a scope of work that was more intensive. And now it went from a couple weeks to months of rehab. And with that was we never notified the insurance agent that we were doing the switch. And when the insurance company came to do their inspection, they said, we're not insuring this. The place is vacant. There was people there working. This was supposed to just convert into a rental property right away. And so they gave us a notice of cancellation. And, having a great insurance agent on your team is very beneficial, because the agent right away went and rewrote it before the cancellation. They give you 30 days notice or whatever that they're going to cancel it, rewrote it that it will be vacant and is going under construction. And we, got the new policy in place with the same carrier and things like that. So, but it is so important, because if something would have happened there, we wouldn't have been covered at all.
One last thing I want to mention too, we just recently interviewed Natalie Collati on episode 368 of the Ricky podcast. So if you go back and listen to that one, the other, I guess, potential downside of getting too crazy with the asset protection is that, if you end up having a lot of LLCs, there are tax implications and additional cost implications associated with that as well. We just got a quote back for our 2023 taxes. And with, we have some entities, we're paying $6,000 to get our taxes filed for one LLC, so depends on how much activity is going on and things like that. So you want to make sure that you're including the maintenance, the cost of maintaining those LLCs with your decision as well.
And our next question is from Nick Sauter. If I take a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, out on our primary residence, does that impact our debt to income ratio? I have no plans to use it for now. I don't want to run into an issue when purchasing another investment property in the next 6 to 12 months. Any experience with it? Thanks in advance. So Tony, have you taken out a HELOC on your primary before? Actually, I don't even know.
I haven't actually. We don't have a HELOC on our primary, but I think before we even answer the question, Ash, about HELOC, I just want to, because I hear a lot of Rickies who get confused between the HELOC and a cash out refinance. So I just want to quickly define the differences.
Yeah, great idea.
When you buy your primary residence, unless you're paying cash, you're getting a mortgage to cover the majority of that purchase. So for round numbers sake, let's say that you buy a home that's worth, I'll use super small numbers here, but $100,000, right? And say that you put down 20%, so you've got an $80,000 mortgage on that property. Over the years, let's say that property, the value increases and you bought it at a value of 100. Now say it's worth $200,000. And maybe your mortgage has been paid down to 50,000. So now you owe 50, the home was worth 200. Okay, you owe 50, the home was worth 200. So you have $150,000 of equity that you can tap into. So when you have this equity in your home, there's two different ways you can play it. You can either get a HELOC or you can refinance, or you could sell it if you want to, right? But assuming you didn't want to sell, HELOC or refinance. With a refinance, you are essentially paying off the original mortgage. So you would pay off that original balance of $50,000. And let's say you put in a new mortgage for maybe $150,000. So of that $150,000, 50 goes towards paying off your balance on your first mortgage. You get to keep the additional $100,000, and then you have a new mortgage in place at $150,000. So the old mortgage is gone forever; it's never coming back. With a HELOC, again, same numbers. You owe $50,000. The home is worth $200,000. You can, instead of replacing your original mortgage, it stays in place, but you then get to take out almost think of it almost like a credit card with your home as the collateral, but you get this revolving credit account, and maybe you don't get the whole 150. Maybe you get, I don't know, maybe they'll give you up to $100,000 or whatever it may be, but you get some amount of that equity that you can then use. So your original mortgage stays in place, and now you've got this line of credit that you only have to pay on if you start using it. with the cash out refinance, when you put a new mortgage in place, it doesn't matter if you use that $100,000 or not. As soon as you close in that refi, you got to start making those new payments. So there's pros and cons to each of those. So I just wanted to lay out what that difference is.
Okay, so now actually answering the question is
She's like, Tony, stop talking so much. Just answer the question.
No, so I've never taken out a HELOC either on my primary, but I do have lines of credit. And the way the lines of credit work against my debt to income is if I have a balance drawn and I am making monthly payments, my credit report will draw with that interest rate or that minimum payment, just like a credit card. So if you were to pull your credit, it may say that your monthly payment for your credit card is $53 because on that month's statement, your credit card is reporting that you owed $53 as your minimum payment. Even if you paid off, say it was $1,000, you paid that whole thing off, it's still going to just show what that minimum payment was. And that's what's calculated into your debt to income. So if you continuously pay off your credit cards, it's probably not even going to show anything. But with your line of credit, you're going to have that interest expense, depending on how your line of credit is set up. So if you have an interest payment that you're making every month, then that is going to show on your credit report and will go into your debt to income because you do have that monthly payment. If you don't have any balance withdrawn on that, then there should be no minimum payment or monthly payment and should not be factored in. It will only be factored in if you have drawn from your line of credit. So I think you're pretty safe with that if you haven't used the balance and just letting it sit there. And that's one of the benefits of doing a line of credit compared to refinancing, because when you refinance, you're getting that money and you're paying interest on it right away. And it is going towards your debt to income. Okay, our last question today is from Adam Keys. Traveling nurses just left my unit after a 3-month stay. The home is so awful that their deposit doesn't even cover the full bill for repairs and cleaning required. I'm itemizing everything and sending an invoice, but expecting no additional payment. Aside from leaving a negative review on Furnish Finder, I'd assume the cost to pursue legal action may not be worth it. Are there any other options that we have? Tony, I have to say, this is my first time ever of hearing traveling nurses trashing an apartment. Usually everyone's saying these are the best guests that you ought to have in your unit. They stay long, they treat it like their home. So,
and Adam, first, hate to hear that you had this experience, but, it is part of just being a real estate investor, especially kind of in this medium term, kind of short term stay environment. Now, one thing I will add is that for all the kind of flack that Airbnb gets amongst hosts in the community, one of the benefits is that they do have a process for damage claims like this. So maybe moving forward, Adam, and I don't know if it's going to happen every single time. Obviously, it won't. But had you had them book through Airbnb or Vrbo, one of the OTAs, then you'd have a path for kind of collecting that income back. So I'll just quickly give a rundown on how it works on those platforms. Vrbo actually like really well, because when someone books your property through Vrbo, you can require them, make it a requirement that they buy damage protection insurance. And for them, it's a cost of they can choose, I think it's like $70, $80, or like $100. And at each one of those levels, there's a different coverage amount that they get. So say they spend $100, there's like $5,000 in protection that they get by paying that insurance policy. Now the insurance policy it's non-refundable, so when they pay that, it's paid for. But if there is damage, they don't have to worry about the host coming after them to get repaid. For you as the host, it's great because A, it's mandatory; they have to buy the insurance, and B, if something happens, all you have to do is claim the amount that you need and you automatically get that amount back. On Airbnb, a slightly different process where Airbnb kind of plays a mediator, and you might not always get back exactly what you're looking for, but at least there's a process in place to get above and beyond whatever, a typical security deposit may be. So Adam, just something to consider is that maybe for your future medium-term rentals, even if they're finding your listing through Furnished Finder, maybe still have them book on a platform like Vrbo or Airbnb so you can get that damage protection. Or if you're going to self-book, right, do a direct booking, there are companies out there that you can also require from your guests to sign up for that still offer that same type of damage protection. There's a company that I know of called Superhog. And Superhawk basically acts the same way as an Airbnb kind of damage protection, or as Vrbo's damage protection as well. So that when your guests book, they have to pay a non-refundable fee up front that covers their insurance policy during your stay. And if there is a claim, now you're just billing against their policy versus having to go after the guest themselves. So Superhawk is another option for you to look into as well.
Tony, that's awesome. I never knew that. And that has always been a fear of direct booking, because we always do Airbnb for the short-term rentals, obviously, but also for all of our midterm rentals, we have stayed on Airbnb. When we first started them, we talked to a couple other investors, and some had done it the way Adam did, where you get them through Furnish Finder, but you do like a lease agreement using, Rent Ready or something like that, but you send them a traditional lease and it's just for 3 months or whatever time period they're staying. And I ended up going the Airbnb route because of the air coverage and the protection and kind of having that mediator for the platform. So I definitely agree that like checking out a different way to actually book people can help. But since you are more on the long-term rental side, I will say right now, because you had them signed a lease agreement, depends how much information you got from them. So did you get a copy of their license? Did you get their social security number? Did you do a credit check? Things like that. Because you can, first of all, you can take them to small claims court. So whatever town your property's in, you can go to small claims court. You can fill out the paperwork yourselves. You don't have to have an attorney to do this. But it really depends how much information you have from them. And then if you have proof, hopefully you took a lot of pictures, things like that, what the property looks like beforehand. And then after they have left the unit, and you can file a claim against them in small claims court, where if you end up going to court, they come, they can state their case, or if they don't, a judgment will be issued against them. So I've done this before. There's somebody who I have a judgment against for like $5,000, I think. We're in year maybe 8 of this judgment, and it's a 10-year judgment. So after 10 years, if they don't pay, the judgment is gone off of the record and they never have to pay it. One caveat to that is if they ever sell anything, it's supposed to be a lien on that property. So if they sold a house or sold a car, I was supposed to be paid from the proceeds first before, anybody else would get paid. But obviously they haven't sold anything or it hasn't been tracked well enough. I'm not sure. Then the next thing that you could actually do is put it into collection. So if you have enough documentation, you have enough proof, and you have all of their information, you could send it to a collections agency to call them and nag them to try to get it. Well, that wraps up our last question today for the Real Estate Rookie Reply. I'm Ashley and he's Tony. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you check out the show notes. You can follow us on Instagram. The links are in the show notes, and we'll see you guys next time.